And when we conclude the next debate, we'll have a round of applause for Bucket and Billy Bob as well. It takes a lot to prepare for these things, and it takes a lot to put your thoughts out there. And so I'm very appreciative of all four of these gentlemen up here slugging it out for Washington County. So my final question that we did not talk about, and Ben and I spoke afterwards, is a request for a pledge from Will and from Dan that whoever wins, that you will support the winner in the primary to go on to win against the eventual Democrat in the general election. Dan, will you make that pledge?
Without hesitation.
Will you make that pledge?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And before we move on, Billy Bob and Bucket, I'd like to hear the same pledge from both of you.
1,000,000%.
I'm gonna turn up your mic.
Yes.
Whichever you want, you can choose.
All right, I get my own microphone this time. Welcome back. We're going to move on to the Senate race for District 6. Representative Billy Bob. Man, I'm taped down again. I can't get away. Sorry. There we go. Representative Billy Bob Fockingham and Mr. Bucket Davis. Mr. Fockingham won the coin toss and is elected to defer. Mr. Davis, you'll go first. This race is for the state Senate, a role that represents multiple communities and carries broader responsibility than a single House district. Here we go. Senate District 6 covers all of Washington. Is that all right? All right. Senate District 6 covers all of Washington County and the easternmost portion of Hancock County, with about 3/4 of the district's Republican voters living in Washington County. Candidates. Tonight, we're going to focus not just on what you believe, but on how you would represent this region, work across different interests, and actually deliver results. Each of you has 90 seconds for your opening remarks. Mr. Davis, you have the floor.
Okay. Is this on? Okay. Because I've had a lot of them say, you got to speak into the mic, we can't hear you. Okay. I'm running for this position because I think that I can work on both sides of the aisle. I served in the 131st a few years ago, and I served on the Marine Resource. And I will say one thing, during the committee that I served on, I can't think of a bill that came in front of us that we didn't agree on, and that's a positive thing. And at that time, the Democrats had control of all committees. So it was an honor to be able to work with them and agree on most of the bills that we had to have. I also, not only did I serve in state legislation, probably about 20 years ago maybe, I was appointed by Governor Paul LePage to serve on a committee called the Regulatory Uptaking. That committee was made up of legislators and senators and some people at large from public, and only one select person for the entire state of Maine. It was an honor to serve on that committee. And by the way, that was when the Republicans had control of the House and the Senate. I also have served as a select person and still am for over 30 years for this town. I'll pass it on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Mr. Fockingham. Good evening, and thank you for hosting this debate tonight. I'm Billy Bob Fockingham. I am a husband, a father, and a fisherman. I currently serve as the House Republican leader in the Maine House of Representatives. I'm just wrapping up 8 years of serving the Down East community there. I have
long, extensive record of getting things done. As you all know, I've unfortunately had to serve under Democrats all 8 years, holding the governor's office, the House, and the Senate. I have one of the probably most successful records of anybody on the Republican side of passing bills. Some of them have been really big bills, but a lot of them have been local bills, and you heard about some of that tonight. I've passed bills to create a legal defense fund from the lobster industry based off of money that we take out of our own license fees. But I have roots that go back in this community generations, all the way to the 1800s. I have lived in this district for 47 out of 47 years. My grandfather was born in Beals Island. We have property in Columbia Falls, camp in Wesley, and no one will fight harder or get more done for this community than I will.
All right, thank you very much. The first question, gentlemen, will be about the role of a state senator. Mr. Falkingham, you'll lead off. A state senator often represents multiple counties or regions with competing priorities. What does effective representation look like at this level?
Well, first of all, I have a set of principles, and I follow those, and we're all Republicans here. We believe in conservative principles. That's what we're looking for in our state senator. I don't believe that there are any competing interests between in the Senate district that I can imagine. I know that there has been some issues with the county court system down here. I have always supported Washington County on those bills, voting in favor of getting a district attorney down here. And I would just listen to my constituents, and my constituents come from all across this Senate district. It's a Senate district that includes 28 communities in Washington County, 16 in Hancock County, and as I have even in the House, I've served people from all over the Down East region.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Davis, same question.
Yes, thank you. One thing about serving in the Senate, if I win this race, there's about 35 senators. There's a lot less people that you gotta try to convince and work with than is in the House. There's a lot of legislators in the House. And I think that I could work very well in the Senate. Some of the senators I know, actually I think there's quite a few that are new, and including me and Billy Willowland's race. So I'm looking forward if this possibly happens. And I agree with what he said. I know that Will Toole had been involved with trying to get around here with the county court system, but we can't seem to pull it off. But hopefully maybe we can this next time around, and hopefully we get more Republicans in the House and in the Senate. This will make a big difference. But even if we don't, you've got to try to work together. You're not going to get a thing done if you can't try to work out the differences. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. I think we'll move on. Move on to a question that has come up directly in this race, and this is about local identity and effectiveness. Mr. Davis, you're going to lead off on this one. There's been an argument made in this race that being from Washington County is the most important qualification. Is where you are from what matters most, or is your ability to be effective in Augusta? Mr. Davis, you're up.
Well, where I'm from, and both, and my ability, what I could do in Augusta. I was born and raised right here, and been here all my life. I've listened to people in Washington County all my life. And one thing I will tell you, that when I served in the House, I had a lot of calls. I'm not a big Facebook guy, so I don't get into computers anymore than I have to. But I had a lot of calls from people, and I always called them back, always. And I was amazed. They said, "Oh, we didn't expect we'd ever hear from you." They said they very seldom ever heard from a legislator or a senator. I don't know if that's true or not, but I always do reach out to people. I'm about people, and there is every concern that anybody would have means just as much to me if it's a big concern or a small concern. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Davis, I'd like to ask you a quick follow-up to that. Help me make a second move here. How does being from here translate into a measurable result?
Well, I think from being from here, a lot of people in Augusta loves Washington County that I had served with in the past. A lot of them come down here in the summer. It is beautiful. They love to come down here. And I really think the word alone, Washington County, does mean a lot to some of those people, even in Southern Maine. I'll let that go right there.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Falkingham, I'll repeat the question. There's been an argument in this race that being from Washington County is the most important qualification. Is where you are from what matters most, or is it your ability to be effective in Augusta?
It's clearly being effective. That's what the constituents want, is somebody that's effective. I've been out there meeting hundreds of people from this whole district, and that's the feedback I'm getting. They want somebody that'll get things done for them. Like I said, let's not forget, I've lived in this district for 47 out of 47 years. I know the community. You won't find anyone any more down east or in touch with this area than I am. I love this area, but being effective is what matters. And this county consistently feels left behind. It's time that they send a heavyweight to Augusta to get things done for them. And I will bring results back. Like I said, there's been things that I've done for this community already. I don't differentiate. It doesn't matter that I'm over there. Just as if somebody came from this area would represent those 16 counties, you're not going to find anybody that's going to fight harder or bring results back to this community more than I will.
All right, thank you. I want to ask a direct follow-up, Mr. Falkingham. If effectiveness is the standard, what have you done or what would you do that demonstrates that? And how do you respond to the public concern, including from sitting Washington County Republicans, that this seat has historically belonged to Washington County?
Yep. I might need you to refresh me on the follow-up, but I've been very effective in getting bills passed for the fishing community. We just, as a matter of fact, on my the last day of session, with some help with some folks that are in this room, I passed my last bill as a member of the House, which was to create an entry program into the Menhaden fishery. No one fought harder than me. No one, I don't think anybody else probably even knew about the importance of the Menhaden fishery to the lobster industry, but the state was going to close that industry down about 4 or 5 years ago. I was successful in keeping it open. If the state had been successful in closing it, there would have been about 200 licenses in the state, 225 licenses. Because of a bill, 2 and now 3 subsequent bills that I passed, that number is up to 476 people, predominantly people in down East Maine that didn't have an opportunity to get the landings that would have shut it off when it did.
Okay, I want to ask one quick follow-up. The second part of that question, how do you respond to the public concern, including from sitting Washington County Republicans, that this seat has historically belonged to a Washington County resident?
That you're getting someone that lives in the Senate district, for their whole life, and will actually bring results back.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, you've emphasized local roots. What would you say to the roughly quarter of Republican voters in this district who live in Hancock County?
In Hancock County, as Billy had mentioned earlier, there's a very small part of that in this district. Roughly 85% of it lies in Washington County. Washington County has always had their own senator that lived in that county. I don't know of any other time that it hadn't. What we need to do is try to get a bill in there that this never happens, that this county, that every county should have at least one senator, period. And I don't hold it against Billy because he doesn't live here, but it's just the fact that Washington County has always had their own senator.
All right, thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Fockingham, your rebuttal here. What did your opponent get wrong about what matters most in this role?
What is my, I think the discussion that we're having right now, as a matter of fact, I asked Mr. Davis recently, if I lived in this county, would you be running against me? And he said no. And so I think that just saying that because someone lives in this geography that they'll do a better job is just simply not true. And that I promise you the same the same level that I brought to my House seat, I'm going to bring to this Senate seat. And I know how things work down there. I've been effective, and I'm going to bring that for the Senate seat.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fockingham. Mr. Davis, I'm going to give you the last word.
Thank you. I did tell Billy that, because he did ask me that question, I said, yes, it would make a big difference to me if you lived here in this county. I wouldn't have been in the race. I did not even realize that Billy was running when I filed the papers. So I was the first one to file my papers. I didn't realize that Billy was running for this seat till after I had filed all my papers and did everything. And then he got in touch with me and talked to me about it. And I said, well, I had heard you was running for the governor's position, which I think he did consider it. And so I told him, I said, look, I already turned in and started my work, so I wasn't going to fall back out. But I did tell him that if he lived in Washington County, it would have been different. So he is on the staff.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to move on to how would you actually deliver as a senator? So effectiveness and operating style. Mr. Davis, you're going to lead off. At the Senate level, results require building support across regions, parties, and sometimes against the governor's office. Walk me through how you would actually deliver on a priority for this district. Mr. Davis.
Well, I would fight hard. I will tell you, when I served in the House, there was opportunities where legislators would be called to the governor's mansion, and we'd have breakfast. She normally would probably invite 6 to 8 of us, and it could be both parties at the same time, and we'd have breakfast. I think what time I served there, I think it was 3 to 4 different times. I've had some of my own parties says I wouldn't darken a door. I said, well, I'm going to go down because I basically had some questions, and to get anything resolved, you got to ask questions. And I wanted to know where she stood on some different things that affected Washington County. And then she had some things and kind of had said to me that I wish you'd change the way that you had voted on a certain bill. And I said, well, I'm not going to. And but I'll come down and eat your bacon any day.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I want to ask you a direct follow-up before we switch over here. And this gets a little bit to operating style. Are you a public voice type, or are you a behind-the-scenes coalition builder, or somewhere in between? And tell me, why does that matter for this seat?
Well, I'm a public guy because of basically here in town. When I served in the legislation, being young at it, learning, you don't say a whole lot right up front. I didn't get on the floor a whole lot to speak, but it was said when I did speak, I made sense. And I'm not a big talker. I get to the bullet points and that's it. Well,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. So, Mr. Focking, I'm going to go over to you and I'll repeat the question. Walk me through how you would actually deliver on a priority for this district.
Well, it takes, sometimes it takes coalition building, and that's one thing I've been really super successful at. Even if Republicans take the governor, the Senate, and the House, like I hope we do, there are times where you might need to pass a bill with 2/3 support, an emergency bill, or, something like that. For example, one of the bills I passed that I guess I would have to say that I'm most proudest of is the Right to Food constitutional amendment. When the Maine Constitution was written in 1820, there were 24 articles in the Declaration of Rights. Right to food is the 25th. It's the first article in the Declaration of Rights that was added to the Constitution in over 200 years. That takes a 2/3 vote in both chambers, the House and the Senate, and then it has to get voted on by the people. I passed a bill that had so much support that the governor let it go without her signature. She didn't even veto it. It had so much support. It was the most comprehensive civil asset forfeiture bill in the country. Don't know if you know what that bill is, but it basically means that you can't have your stuff taken from you without just cause. I've passed numerous bills like that. A lot of the bills that I've passed have actually gone without the governor's signature, which is kind of funny to me. That means that there was enough legislative support behind them that even though she didn't support them, she just let them go without her signature.
All right, thank you. I actually would like to ask you the same follow-up. Do you consider yourself to be more of a public voice or a behind-the-scenes coalition builder, or somewhere in between, and why does that matter for the seat?
Both. Both have their own values. You need to rally support, public support when you can. You need to rally group support. Sometimes you can't speak to everyone individually, so you get up in front of a crowd and you speak to everybody. You broadcast it out there. But sometimes you need to know that I need this person and this person, or if I get that person's support, that will have key influence over other bunch of people. So you go and have a one-on-one conversation and build a relationship with that person. So it's both. It's the public speaking and the behind the scenes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davis, I'd like to give you an opportunity for rebuttal. Do you believe your opponent's approach is the right one for this seat?
yes.
That was fast. Good enough. All right, I think we'll move on then. Thank you. All right, so let's move forward to pressure on the fishing industry. So, Mr. Fockingham, you're going to lead off on this. The fishing industry, especially lobstering, is the single largest economic driver in this region. It also faces sustained federal regulatory pressure, right whale rules from NOAA, offshore wind permitting, observer requirements, gear restrictions. What is the most important thing the state can actually do for this industry? And what is one thing the state cannot fix that you would still take on as a senator? Mr. Fockingham.
Well, it's obviously very important to me. My livelihood depends on it. The one thing that the state cannot do is the state cannot control the federal government. But what we have to do in that situation is use the influence we have, and right now, that influence is Senator Susan Collins. And I've even a few years ago traveled to Washington, D.C. to have a meeting with her. It was before, it was to do with these whale rules, and that was before she was successful in getting the delay implemented. And I don't know if everybody was aware of that, but these horrible draconian rules were going to go into effect, and we were going to have such a reduction that it would have cleaned us out. And Susan Collins was able to delay it another, I think, 6 or 7 years. So we need to elect people that are effective in Washington, D.C., like Senator Collins, to fight for us down there. What the state needs to do is it needs to, if it ever comes down to it, they need to exert the 10th Amendment, which says that the states have control, and we need to basically claim our fisheries. And I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that, because there'd be a lot of trade problems there. But we need to put our foot down and say, we're not doing this ropeless, we've done enough, and we're not gonna accept it. And the same thing with the windmills.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buckingham. Mr. Davis.
Yes. I'm not a commercial lobster fisherman. I do fish with my grandson, recreational. I fished with my grandfather when he was a commercial fisherman. But what we need to do, you gotta work with Congress, and hopefully we get Collins and LePage in there. This can be a big help. The regulations that our fishermen have to go by is killing them, because basically they're throwing everything back for the Canadians. One thing I think we need to do is, while we've got President Trump in office, United States needs to take the gray zone. They need to have control of that gray zone. If that happens, this will really ease up a lot with the Canadians and our fishermen. Because basically, our regulations are working for the Canadians. It's not working for our local fishermen whatsoever. But the key thing is, we've got to take that gray zone.
All right, thank you, Mr. Davis. Yes, Mr. Buckingham.
I just wanted to have one really quick follow-up too. Over the last 8 years, our Department of Marine Resources is traditionally pretty good to the fishery, but it's been a lot worse in the last 8 years than it was when LePage was there. And we saw things like 100% mandatory reporting, tracking devices all come in under this last administration. And those are things that I would reverse if we could.
Okay, so that leads nicely into the first follow-up, which I'll start with you, Mr. Buckingham. You led the bipartisan letter from 151 legislators on the right whale rules. What is the next step? And what did that fight teach you about what works at the federal level versus what doesn't?
Yeah, well, this is something I think we need to somehow come to a conclusion on this whole issue. It's unfortunate because you've got these environmental extremist groups that just continue to sue. Hopefully we can somehow bring this to a Supreme Court conclusion that will just end it, that says that they've done what they need to do, they're not in violation of the Endangered Species Act, and just put it to rest.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davis, next follow-up is for you. You have lifelong ties in the fishing community, family in the industry, time on the boat with your grandfather, uncle, decades of personal connection. From the community's view, what do legislators most often get wrong when they try to help fishermen? And what would you do differently?
I don't know, basically, if they get anything wrong. I know what time that I was up there, I believe that even the other side of the aisle understood the lobster fishermen, and I believe they supported them. This is more federal than it is state. So I don't believe the state legislators have a whole lot of control over it.
Thank you very much. I think we will move on beyond fishing. Let's talk about the broader regional economy. All right, Mr. Davis, you'll start off with this one. Beyond fishing, economic development in this region has lagged behind other parts of the state. What is one specific thing you would prioritize to change that? And how would you actually get it done?
You're talking about the local economy?
I'm talking about the local economy beyond fishing.
Okay. Well, right just down the road here, just a few miles, you got a former place called A.M. Look Canning Company. And it's sitting there idle. And it's a shame. That needs to be reopened. We need to go back in and start canning up clams, lobsters, like they used to. I mean, you got a perfect building right here, and you've got the resource right here. So that would be one thing that would help the economy. But another thing we need to do, we need to start teaching our young a trade. We need to get them into a trade, because we're losing all of our trade. What we have around right here in this area are plumbers and electricians. They're about ready to retire. And if we don't get somebody involved in these trades, I believe what should be done, the state should step in and pay these young adults to go for these trade schools and work on under a apprentice to see if they like it. But also, you need to offer some of those classes at nighttime, because some of the working people can't possibly do it during the day. But this will help the economy a lot. And we need to take advantage of our deep waters in Eastport. I mean, we should be shipping stuff in and out, out of that port. And that would boost the economy too. But I could go on and on. There's a lot of different things we could do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Mr. Fockingham, I'll repeat the question for you. Beyond fishing, economic development in this region has lagged behind other parts of the state. What is one specific thing you would prioritize to change that? And how would you actually get it done?
Yeah, this is a huge issue, and it touches on my conclusion, the one question that you gave us at the end, so but I would say one thing that I have done is I worked with Senator Trey Stewart, and we were successful in getting a bill called the New Markets Tax Credit passed. I see Owen nodding his head in the back because he knows about it. This is a bill that was used by the Baileyville Mill to do $20 million in capital investments that kept the mill up and running. That mill produces 400 good-paying jobs. It's the biggest employer in the region, and it's still one of those things. I don't even know how we did it. It was a miracle that we got it passed in a Democrat budget. But I hope that that's something that can be used here, because this region needs more than anything some economic development. That's the problem with down here. Like you said, if you take away fishing, there's not much going down here, and we need to do that. There's a lot that Augusta needs to do. One bill that could help a little bit is a bill I put in that wasn't successful, but I'll continue to put it in. It's where nonprofits are able to take properties off the tax rolls in these land trusts, and they don't pay property taxes, which doesn't feed to the local economy, and it takes usable land away. So that how are you going to have economic development if they keep continuing to buy up all this land in the region? They basically want to turn the whole of down east into some kind of a park, and we can't do that. We need the land so that people can use it for commercial uses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fockingham, I want to ask you a quick follow-up on this new markets bill that you worked on. What is the biggest obstacle to putting that to work in Washington County?
The problem with it is that it's not just capital investment that's needed. It's that when people look to Maine, in general, the whole state, but is that there are hardworking people. Nobody works harder, especially in this region. You have a great group of people that can work, but you look at Maine and the first thing you see is 5th highest taxes in the country, 5th highest energy costs in the country, and it literally makes Maine off limits. So we have to do something about that, because nobody's going to come here and pay those taxes and pay those energy costs. Makes it unaffordable to set up a new business here.
Okay, I'm going to push back one more time, and I apologize. So what's the first step? What's the first move here that would make a difference for the economy here in Washington County?
We need to lower energy costs. I'd say that's the biggest problem to setting up shop here is energy costs. That's the top of everything.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Davis, back to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Another thing that would help the economy, we've got to cut back on all these regulations. We got way too many regulations. And we shouldn't be shipping any timber out of this state here unless it's a finished product. I mean, we ship all our raw materials out, then we gotta turn around and pay a lot more to get it back. Let's put our own people to work here and finish our product right here.
Okay, so I understand. So some value add to our raw materials. How do you accomplish that? What's the biggest obstacle to getting that going?
Well, I think you gotta go through legislation to get bills, because the first thing you gotta do is ease up on some of these regulations. Nobody's gonna go into business with all this red tape you've gotta go through. We gotta ease up on some of this stuff.
Mr. Fockingham, anything further? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on. One more on the regional economy, housing and the people who live here year-round. Mr. Fockingham, you're gonna lead off on this one. Across coastal Maine, working families and young people are being priced out. Short-term rentals, second home demand, a shortage of year-round housing. Senate District 6 feels this hard. What is your specific plan to make sure people who work here can afford to live here?
Well, you have to make housing affordable. People can't afford to buy houses. One thing I'd start off with is I'd kick the Chinese out. They've bought up for real. I'd kick out the Chinese marijuana growers that have bought all the property here. They've bought. It's actually scary how many properties they've bought, and it's all housing. It's just regular houses. They buy them. They start hooking up more electricity than you're even supposed to hook up. They know how to basically hot wire it, and they're growing illegal weed here, and they've bought up thousands of houses. And when they do that, they basically ruin them and take them off the market because they become mold filled and ruined, and they abandon them. Another thing you got to do is lower property taxes. That's why I'd like to see the homestead exemption expanded. I am a firm believer that I hate all taxes, really, to be honest with you. I think the worst tax in the hierarchy of taxes is the property tax, because one of the foundations of our country is private property ownership, and you should be able to own a home and not be forced out of it by the government or forced to pay rent on something you own. So we really should expand the homestead exemption. I mean, it might sound crazy to some people, but I don't see why the homestead exemption isn't $100,000, because you should be able to afford to live in a place without getting extorted by the government to live there.
Thank you, Mr. Fockingham. Mr. Davis, question is to you, and that is, what is your specific plan to make sure people who work here can afford to live here?
Well, what we need to do for a person today couldn't possibly build a new home. It's just too expensive. One thing it could help, and I could, if I was in office, I could probably help to get the state interest, to get the interest rate dropped. And I think you're probably gonna see more, because you hear a lot more about these little tiny houses, they call them. And another thing is, the state has got so bad that it's pretty pathetic when a man's gotta steal from himself to make an honest living, because that's about what it's come to in this state. But I think through legislations, we could get some bills through. I think by lowering the interest rates would help quite a bit on a home. Because you're talking about homes, is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just talking about general affordability for people that work here.
Can I have a little bit more?
You have a minute?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Another thing is with electricity prices. Nuclear power. Now, a lot of people said it, probably said, geez, we don't want nuclear power. But I'm gonna tell you something right now. Right here where you're sitting, the way that a crow flies, it ain't probably 50 miles from here to New Brunswick, Canada, and you've got a nuclear plant. They're much safer than what they used to be. I'm very interested in nuclear plants. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Davis. So, Mr. Fockingham, I'd like to start with you for the follow-ups. You voted on housing bills in the House. What was the most important fight? What did it teach you? And what's the next bill you would push for as senator?
I see, honestly, it was funny because this doesn't apply to housing, but I was talking to the headmaster over at WA and I said, what would you like the state to do? And he said, leave us alone. And it's true. Honestly, a lot of times when the government gets involved in things, it causes a problem. And most of these housing bills I saw as just a problem as interference. Honestly, we shouldn't be playing a part in messing with that stuff other than taking back regulations and removing the burden that the state puts on building a house. They say that 25% of the cost of building a house right now is regulations. So that's where you're gonna start. Remove that cost and you're basically giving the person 25% of the value right back.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davis, this will be for you. You see this in your community, young families leaving, year-round housing turning into short-term rentals. From that vantage, where is the breaking point? And what would you push for in the Senate?
For the young people leaving the area, you mean?
Yeah, I'll reread it. So you see this in your community, young families leaving, year-round housing turning into short-term rentals. From that vantage, where is the breaking point? And what would you push for in the Senate?
I don't know what you could do. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just don't know. I don't.
Okay, so part of that question is about short-term rentals. And I guess I'll ask that question directly. Where do you stand on short-term rentals?
Well, if I owned something that I was renting to you, I don't think it'd be your business or anybody else's business if it was short or long-term. I'd like to see people stay here long-term and have a family and have the kids grow up here, go to school and work here. But the problem is it's not much to do here unless you work on the water. That's mainly what there is in this area. And it ain't just anyone that can go up and get a lobster license, because you've got to go through so many hours and get credit hours to be, and then you've got to be on a waiting list. And I think Billy could answer that better than me, because he does it on the water. But is that not correct? I don't believe you can just go right out and get a lobster license.
So, thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Fockingham, I'll give you the last word on this question. Floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I think, once again, you're talking about private property ownership, and I think there's too much importance put on the fact that that's a lack of housing, and what we really need to do is turn our focus on how do we make housing more affordable than trying to, get in the way of people's businesses and things like that. It's their property, they're coming up with a business, For some people, that's their retirement plan. They might buy a house, they might, rent it out for so many years to pay the mortgage or pay it off, and then they plan on living in it when they retire. I don't really like the idea of having too much interference in that. I don't think that's the root of the housing problem. I think the root of the housing problem is affordability, and that's what we need to focus on.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davis.
We have folks right here in this town that they live in a home and they have a cottage on the lake. It's quite often that these folks will rent that a couple of weeks in the summer. And they do that to help get enough money to pay the property taxes on it. That's why that I mentioned earlier that it's my business, not anybody else's business, what I do with my home or my cottage.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Now we'll have a question on judgment and temperament. Mr. Davis, you'll lead off on this. The Senate requires working with people you strongly disagree with. including the governor's office, agency heads, and legislators from the other party. Tell me about a time you had to do that and still get to a result. What was your approach? What did you learn?
I can tell you that when I served in the House, we had a couple bills come up in front of the Marine Resource Committee. And I had to basically educate those legislators on the harm it would have done down here in Washington County if that bill would have passed. And I think by talking with them, and I think the key thing is explaining and showing them and how that a lot of times, because most of those people, you leave Washington County or anywhere on the coast, you get, inland. We actually had a couple people that served on the Marine Resource that told me, I don't even know anything about lobster fishing. There's no water anywhere near me, ocean water. So they relied a lot on me for, for the background. But I think the key thing is being able to talk. I don't care what party you are. And it doesn't mean by talking to them that you're gonna give up for their beliefs. But you got to try to work it out. And I've done that. I've done that when I served it for 2 years.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Mr. Buckingham?
I've had my fair share of both, quite often. Very heated debates with people down there when we disagreed, and a lot of compromise when we agreed. There was, at one time, I got called to the governor's office and I thought we were gonna have a discussion about the budget with our chief of staff. And he was upset about a quote that was in a newspaper article and called me everything but a white man. He called me lazy.